You're watching Morning at NTV.
Good morning, Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim sisters and brothers. My name is Malaki Vilodera and this is Morning at NTV, and this also is the Kickstarter segment, and today we'll be big on having a discussion on the political situation in the country. What are the measures that we can embrace to move on and just, carry on and of course heal from what we have been seeing in the past few days since we had the fracas in Arua municipality. So that will be the discussion. Bringing your views. Our hashtag is Morning at NTV. That's on Twitter, on Facebook and YouTube. You can stream us live and drop in your comments. NTV Uganda are the pages. And in studios to talk about that is Dr. Kakungulu Mayambala, who is a political analyst. Thank you so much for making time. The political situation in the country is something that we cannot turn a blind eye to. It's a big story in the local dailies and even on social media across the globe and even out of the country now. So in the dailies, I will start with the Daily Monitor and of course go to the New Vision, and of course the headlines are tallying because now here we have 100 arrested in Bobby riots. And of course yesterday we saw some losing their lives. In Mitiana we had one person who was shot dead and of course 5 others injured by police, and of course we saw the IGP together with his team apprehend 2 police officers for using excessive force. Now, what's your opinion about the police using live bullets just to disperse rioters or protesters in the different regions?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, viewers. I think that the police, ordinarily, they are meant not to use excessive force, and in such situations like handling of demonstrations or strikes, they are using rubber bullets. But sometimes, depending on the situation, you may find that the police deployment at that situation, they have deployed this ordinary police as opposed to the anti-riot police, who may not have the rubber bullets, and may use live bullets, for example, in the air to disperse these protesters, and in the end, some of those protesters may be shot by the stray bullets. Yeah.
But it's not right for them.
Yeah, it is not right.
We also saw yesterday the military taking over security from police. We all know that when the military takes over security, it shows that things are really bad. Do you feel like that was the right move to take in terms of just deploying the military to take over security? Was the situation that bad that the police could not handle?
The police is the one which is responsible for civilian or handling of civilians, but under the Police Act and the other laws, the security forces may complement each other. And as we saw yesterday and the other past days, the demonstrations were turning nationwide. So for that reason, the police may have been stretched and therefore needed reinforcement from the military. Otherwise, ordinarily it's meant to be the police to handle. Then the other thing which is also there is that the demonstrators usually, because the police is a civilian force and usually very professional and uses minimum force, when they don't see the military, sometimes their response with the police is a delayed response. But once they see the military is involved, then they tend to be more cautious and much of the time may just withdraw from the demonstrations. So I think the security forces may be just using it, even if the police has the capacity, just to scare off more people coming on the streets, because once they know the military has taken over, they know the military is most likely going to handle them in a more rough manner compared to the police.
And we already have over 100
Yes.
that have been arrested so far.
Yes.
And I'm sure we have some of the families of this 100 people that are watching now. What then? What happens to this 100 people? According to the law, what exactly should happen?
Once somebody has been arrested, they are meant to be detained in a gazetted area. So in this case, these 100 people should be ordinarily in police custody, and they should be aligned or taken to the courts of law within 48 hours. So that means they have up to tomorrow or latest Thursday to take them to court to be charged. So in custody, they have a right to be accessed by their family members, medical doctor if they are in they need any medical attention, and also their lawyers. So I think that these people should be in the gazetted areas of detention, depending on where they've been detained from.
You've mentioned that they need to be given that freedom for maybe people like their lawyers to access them. But I'm sure most of these 100 people cannot afford that kind of, you know, legal support. So what happens in that event when they're taken to court after, you know, you said 2 days maximum? What happens? Who will represent them?
When, you know, according to the Constitution, our Constitution, Article 28 and the other laws on criminal procedure, the only persons who are entitled to legal representation at the expense of the state are those who are faced with charges of a capital nature, which is the offense should be attracting death penalty or imprisonment for life. Otherwise, these other offenses, legal representation is only if the accused person can afford, and or maybe if they can get free legal advice, but the state is not obliged to offer them legal advice. So some of them, because these are going to be not really very serious offenses, they are just going to be charged with incitement of violence, or if they destroyed some properties, maybe malicious damage to property. So some human rights and the legal aid providers may give them legal advice, but ordinarily don't be shocked if you just see them appearing in court just on their own without any legal representation. And
what are the probable penalties that they may be facing?
Usually for offenses like incitement of violence, the penalty is not so much. It would be maybe between 1 year to about 3-4 years in jail. So it's not very big. Yeah.
I think it's big. 1 year of, you know, being, you know, in prison. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, even 6 months is a long time just to be away from freedom and, you know, of course, from just normal life and just access to your families. But thank you for that. There's this other issue. Yesterday we saw a lawyer, Mr. Male Mabirizi, go to court to petition, you know, for the immediate release of Mr. Bobby Wine, aka Bobby Wine, the Member of Parliament, Chadondo East. Do you think that his petition, his appeal to the Constitutional Court will actually hold water?
Well, I think in this situation, if he has gone to the Constitutional Court, is trying to ask the Constitutional Court to interpret a few issues. One of them would be whether Honorable Bobby Wine is detained in a constitutionally gazetted place. The other is whether he has not overstayed his detention.
Right.
And whether the military court has power to try him. Some of these matters have already been handled by the Constitutional Court prior in the other cases of Dr. Kiza VSJ and others who have been detained in these facilities. So I think it's good for the jurisprudence, especially now that Honorable Bobby Wine is being detained in circumstances which are not very clear, especially on his health and the time he has taken to be produced in court. But if a detained person is not in good medical condition to appear in court, usually they are left in the hospital and they can only appear when they're in good shape to take plea.
And yesterday we saw that his, you know, Bobby Wine's private doctor being allowed to access him and just to see him together with his family. But still, it's a tug of war. But at least then we saw that happened after a long, you know, a long trend of pleas just for him to be able to access his personal doctor. Moving on. Still sticking on Mr. Male Mabirizi, he was actually asking for the annulment of the constitutional, for the UPDF Act to be annulled. And this in particular is the 119 subsection 1G, 1H, and also the 160, clause. He also said that this was what it actually states is contrary to the 210 kind of clause that is still in the same provision of the UPDF Act in the Constitution. What do you make of this? Do you feel like the Constitution in this regard, when it comes to some issues, actually contradicts itself?
The Constitution, of course, came before the UPDF Act, but then over a period of time, the Constitution provided for the military courts and the UPDF, but then we have also the Penal Code Act, which provided for some offenses which civilians would do. So before the advent of the UPDF Act, if, for example, a civilian was found with a gun, illegal possession of a gun, or in armed robbery, they would be tried by the civilian courts, the courts of judicature and the other courts where civilians would be tried. But then with the passing of the UPDF Act, these civilians can be tried within the military courts after they are said to have assumed the role of the military. So there is a bit of need for a constitutional interpretation to see if somebody's acts, just if you act like a soldier, then you thereby become a soldier. So that's what I think the court should pronounce itself on. Otherwise, like I've already said, the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court, they've handled this matter, and in the end, they say that this was a competent court of jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Of course, everyone is getting to that point whereby the current situation is actually going to hurt the country. Already we're seeing the UK issuing travel advice to Uganda in the wake of this particular arrests and even protests in the country. Now, moving on, what's the right direction for the government and the citizens to take in terms of reconciliation, just for us to see this issue come to an end? What's the first step to take?
In this context, I think the major point of contention is that both sides seem to have grievances. The NRM or the government thinks that the opposition supporters with Bobi Wine misbehaved in Arua by allegedly stoning the presidential convoy and vehicles, and the other group, the opposition, think that the matter, they've been ill-treated, and so both sides seem to be very bitter. But I think if Bobi Wine, Honorable Kyagulanyi, can recover and is maybe released on bail, and then we see how the case takes on, I think the situation will go back to normal.
So for you, the first step is for him to be released on bail? If
he's released, even if just on bail, and especially if people can see him, because every morning somebody wakes up, Honorable Bobi Wine has died, Honorable Zake is about to die, so that's what is causing all this tension. Otherwise, if these people can be produced in court, or maybe they apply for bail and then they are out there, I think the situation, there will be no need for people to come to the streets to demonstrate.
What other move do you think can help us in this particular situation? Yesterday we saw the interreligious leaders just coming out to push for the need of, a national dialogue and a reconciliation process to just, commence. What do you have to say about that?
I think the thing is that these two forces are competing for political space.
Right.
Yeah, so they are competing for political space, and there are 3 points. The first one is that, of course, no political party would like to give away political power easily. So the NRM is not going to give the opposition political power easily unless maybe they win, and so they have to just surrender. Then the other is that sometimes there are excesses, and I think these excesses are the ones which have to be handled, like not one group feeling that maybe they've been mistreated or there is a high-handedness on one side or the other. The other thing is that we are just, because when the NRM came to power, and also the long history of military rule and lack of political parties, the country is yet to recover from the no-party politics and the movement politics. So the key players are yet to appreciate that there can be opposing views, or there can be a legally existing opposition or there can be a ruling party. So I think those three need to be harmonized now that we are over 20 years since political parties were returned in 1996.
Right,
yeah.
right. So, but over and above that, a national dialogue would be important.
I think what is needed now is national reconciliation. These parties have to talk in the inter-party dialogue. They already those talks, although they are still processes of mistrust.
Right.
So, but these are already there, but there is mistrust on whether really they are genuine, and sometimes even when the talks are going on, sometimes the action don't reflect the talks. So that's, I think, what needs to be done.
And with regards to political parties just coming, to the fore to reconcile and have this, honest conversations with each other, which party or who exactly should spearhead this? Because I know it's right now people, like you said, are bitter. It's an ego kind of front whereby this political party feels like, no, this one has to approach us to reconcile. So in your opinion, who should spearhead this process?
Oh, okay, so you are talking about all the political parties,
just
including the NRM?
Yes, not the national dialogue, because I know with the national dialogue then we'll have, religious bodies coming into play. But now just for the political parties having that conversation in their own space, who should, spearhead this conversation? Is it the ruling party or just anyone can?
Well, this one depends, because like I know the FDC, they've proposed some people whom they think could spearhead these talks, but they can leave it nationally. They can get some opinion leaders within the country. If they think they cannot, they can get some prominent Africans who can lead these talks, or even the UN or the diplomats can help them to have a dialogue. But the main thing is really the fear that these are really not genuine discussions, and that the players just use it like to be seen to be having some sort of dialogue. So that's the main challenge. Otherwise, I think that it's possible to have this kind of dialogue.
Okay, all right. When we are having the post-election violence in Kenya, we saw the UN coming out strongly to just spearhead the reconciliation process. Unfortunately, the person who was at the forefront of this passed on just a few days ago, Mr. Kofi Annan, but it actually bore fruit. And I truly understand where you're coming from, saying that it's very important to have someone who is impartial coming to help these political parties just to have that reconciliation process. Yes. We are also seeing on the dailies the musicians in the country just pushing and actually asking for a dialogue to take place between the President, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, to have a dialogue with the family of Bobi Wine, Honorable Sentamu, to just have that particular conversation on how to move on from this. So I think the big conversation from today henceforth is how can we heal as a country? How can these political parties, just reconcile, and also how can, the government handle this situation in a more, sensitive manner, so to speak. And also for us as the citizens of the country, how can we just maybe share your comments and your views on how this reconciliation process can actually happen in the country? It's very paramount just for us to, save our country. Remember, so far the UK has issued travel advice on Uganda. And so if this is not sorted out soon, then we really don't know where it's going to go. As citizens, let's push for messages of how then can we move on from this particular situation. That has been it. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That has been it for Morning at 10 TV. Of course, Andrew Chamagero is on ground. He will be in touch with you, our Muslim brothers and sisters, just to see what celebrations are underway in the different parts of Kampala. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. My name is Malaki Villaodera. Do have yourself a blessed day.